Over the years, Edward has received his share of criticisms. At the same time, others have remained devoutly Team Edward, sharing their own reasons for why he's still a dreamboat. All of these assertions, though, be they negative or positive, forget the real reason you'd want to avoid dating Edward. He's a vampire. Yes, he's a self-identified vegetarian vampire, and he means well. However, he is a vampire, and bloodlust can be the undoing of even the most well-intentioned bloodsucker. Then there are his flaws as a person. They've been listed before, but I thought I'd cover my own reasons why I was never Team Edward. Obviously, Edward can be a jerk, even a controlling one, and some have accused him of being abusive. But I think there are less sinister but no less important reasons he was a bad fit for Bella. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about fantasy books, discuss characters and lore, share my bookish opinion, and offer the occasional writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of animal blood, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. Whether it's his supernatural state, his interests, or his personality, here are several reasons I'm Team Jacob. Number 1. He's moody as hell. Edward isn't exactly a cheerful person. Where Jacob is described as being warm, Edward is, quite literally, as cold as ice. Even when he's not being rude or grouchy, Edward is a pessimist. He worries constantly over the worst-case scenario, a tendency not helped by his sister's ability to give those scenarios to him in graphic detail, and he's always berating himself. Constantly moaning about how he's bad for Bella, how he's a monster, and how he wishes it were easier for vampires to kill themselves, he's not particularly uplifting. Moreover, as I've discussed in a previous video, Bella shows signs of depression and anxiety. Taking a depressed person and then pairing them with another depressed person isn't necessarily a good thing. While Bella, with her love of such figures as Heathcliff, might be drawn to Edward's Byronic manner, that kind of attitude would become more irritating than glamorous after a while. In fact, on more than one occasion, Edward does piss Bella off with his mood swings. Beating himself up following their wedding night, Bella's happy fantasies are punctured by her husband's moping. In New Moon, Edward's desire for an easy suicide downright disturbs Bella. After all, who wants to hear their boyfriend discuss, in a matter-of-fact way, how he might kill himself? The fact is, Edward is too angsty to be at ease around. He's not Anakin-level mopey, but he overthinks everything and causes unnecessary worry for those who love him. He just wouldn't be an easy person to live with, bad boy or no. Number 2. He's dramatic. If being moody wasn't enough, Edward has a tendency to overreact. Instead of trying rational discussion or calmly planning, he flies into a frenzy. Shooting first and asking questions later, Edward's desire to protect others often leads them into more danger than ever. James's desire to pursue Bella was initially triggered by Edward's reaction. By snarling at the tracker and leaping to the defensive, Edward inadvertently made Bella a prize to be won. Then there's Edward's infamous breakup with Bella, which was definitely not one of his finer moments. Alice thought Edward was going overboard. She even warned Edward what would happen, revealing to him the emotional mess Bella would become if he left. And still, he disappeared. The fact he left Bella, period, was cruel, but the reason he did it was, quite frankly, inadequate. Edward worried he'd hurt Bella if she stayed with him. While that was always a possibility, he'd already proven he could handle himself around her. He'd been alone with her and literally tasted her blood. Sure, he might accidentally crush her, but that was more unlikely with each day. Moreover, Alice would have seen if Bella was going to die. He'd already taken the ultimate risk with Bella's life, by taking her to the meadow, a place where Alice did see the potential for Edward to kill Bella. Furthermore, Bella was hurt because of the actions of other vampires. While Edward certainly attracted vampires towards Bella, the cat was already out of the bag, so to speak. Edward left too late, because Bella was already on Victoria's hit list. She was living in a town frequented by vampires, and one of her best friends was a werewolf. Whether Edward liked it or not, Bella had a target on her back, especially since she was one of those humans who smelled extra good to vampires generally. Then there was the Valtieri incident, a fiasco which would have lasting consequences. Though Bella narrowly avoided being killed, she was nonetheless on the Valtieri's radar. Had Edward actually bothered to verify Rosalie's report of Bella's death, the Valtieri would have remained ignorant of Bella's existence, which in turn might have prevented their attempts to kill Renesmee. By overreacting to everything and taking his actions to extremes, Edward nearly cost his loved ones everything several times over. Reason number 3. He's controlling. There's no getting around it. Sometimes Edward is bossy. Used to getting his own way, he doesn't always consider Bella's point of view. Physically stronger than his partner, he can literally drag her around if she disagrees with him, and that's unfair. While he can't help his strength, he could have alleviated Bella's insecurities by offering her autonomy in other areas. Granted, Edward does learn to listen to Bella by the 4th book, giving her the choice to marry, make love, and be changed by him. Still, he takes a long time to reach that point, and he can be demanding towards his siblings too. No doubt Alice would have remained in Bella's life on Edward's departure, but Edward insisted they all leave. Edward's behavior is the worst in Eclipse, when he outright bans Bella from seeing Jacob. He reasons it's because Jacob is a werewolf, even convincing himself. But that's just a cover. Plus, Jacob is no more dangerous than Edward, especially since he protected Bella for several months without hurting her, thereby proving himself. For Edward to call Jacob dangerous and himself safe is hypocritical. Worse, it's not even the real reason he keeps Bella away from Jake. Even Bella's human friend, Angela, can tell that Edward's actually jealous. Threatened by the importance Jacob has in Bella's life, Edward protects himself, not by being decent, but by forcing Bella to give up her friendship. Edward also makes the choice to leave Bella in New Moon. Though again worrying about her safety, he removes her say from the conversation. He also has Alice kidnap Bella while he's hunting, so she can't sneak off to see Jacob, and he literally destroys her truck when she attempts to do so. Though he eventually allows her to choose, it's not hard to see where reader criticism comes from. I'll allow that he changes, but the problem is that Bella never has the thought he should. From the start of his antics, Bella should have put her foot down. She tried occasionally to argue with Edward, but her attempts were half-hearted, which means, changed or not, Edward was never held accountable for being kind of a jerk. Number 4. He lacks common interests with Bella. Part of why people struggle to become invested in Edward and Bella's relationship has to do with their lack of shared interests. This might seem small, but common passions actually form an important bedrock for a lasting relationship. The fact is, the relationship didn't make sense to people. The forbidden love story and the danger to Bella's life were enough for many to make it exciting. But what was there after that? Take away Edward's being a vampire, and you end up with 2 attractive teenagers who have literally nothing in common. The only interest which could be brought up is an enjoyment of music. Both like the classics, and Bella loves to listen to music while Edward loves to play it. Still, there's little they can do together besides talk, argue, or kiss. Edward should have actually taught Bella to play piano, Bella should have turned him into a Jane Austen stan. Even if they didn't have common interests to begin with, they should have made a point of forming them. They could have swapped CDs and books, exposing themselves to the stories and songs their partner liked. They should have found movies they both loved and made a point of watching them together. They could have learned something new together, like a language or an art. Both have good grades, so why couldn't they share a passion for biology? Why couldn't they debate physics, talk chemistry, or argue over medical terms? Why couldn't they watch Shakespeare films together and banter about what they liked or disliked about each version? Granted, Bella and Edward do have a debate about Wuthering Heights, and in Midnight Sun, they are shown having more in-depth discussions around books, but there needed to be more. Conversely, Bella's relationship with Jacob feels more natural, because they actually make a point of hanging out together. From the start of her relationship with Edward, it was about romance. With Jacob, though, she had a solid friendship to build from first. Bella and Jacob enjoy riding motorcycles. They like to hike together. And if they become especially desperate, they'll do homework or attend a crappy movie. Not once does Edward actually invite Bella to go somewhere outside his house, like a shop or the beach. But with Jacob, Bella is busy. There's just a sense they have commonalities. Certainly they could have had more, and Jacob isn't without his flaws. But at least it's easier to see why, beyond his looks or powers, Bella would be drawn to him as a person. When it comes to Edward, it's harder to understand why Bella likes him, beyond the fact he's gorgeous and can give her immortality. Reason number 5. He's a vampire. This might seem obvious, but the fact Bella is dating a vampire is actually pretty serious. Though Edward can be gloomy or demanding, he's right about one thing. Bella doesn't take his being a vampire seriously enough, which in turn leads to readers ignoring it too. This isn't to say they shouldn't have dated on that basis alone, but Bella should have considered it more carefully. It goes without saying that vampires, even pretty ones which sparkle, are dangerous. They drink blood, and with one wrong gesture, they can snap a human in half. Edward warns Bella repeatedly he could kill her, and though he elects to stay with her, he becomes frustrated by her inability to comprehend her own danger. By kissing him and then eventually asking to make love with him, she shows a lack of regard for her safety. It's probably that, more than anything, which makes Edward hesitate to sleep with her. If she'd shown a greater awareness of the risks they were taking, and even some fear, Edward might have relented sooner. As it was, Bella could be an unpredictable element, because she didn't have that instinctive fear keeping her in check. Vampires drink blood, they snap necks, they snarl and hunt. Vampires can be terrifying, and it wouldn't have hurt for Bella to consider that. Plus, by being with a vampire, you have to give up a great deal. You have to leave behind your friends and family, live a life of secrecy, and if you become a vampire yourself, give up several human pleasures. Bella seemed too unaffected by Edward being a vampire. She never seemed especially torn over the prospect of leaving her friends and parents behind. She didn't mourn the loss of being able to eat or blush, and she seemed impatient almost to leave her human life behind, as though it offered her nothing. The truth is, in choosing to be with a vampire, and then to become one, she should have felt the effects of her sacrifice. In conclusion, at the end of the day, Bella and Edward have been immortalized, literally, as one of the most famous bookish couples. But many readers continue to take fault with the relationship and Edward himself. Personally, I don't hate Edward, but I do wonder whether or not he was the best for Bella. Whether it was his personality, his lack of shared hobbies, or the literal fact he was a vampire, there are several reasons Edward could be considered a poor fit for Bella. Can you think of any other reasons Edward and Bella didn't fit? Whose team are you on? Are you secretly Team Jasper or Team Alice? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.